don't even know if the warehouse should be open, really. But
Mm.
not my decision. So, hey, you right?
Yeah, you?
Not bad. Why did it come up Richard Harrison under you?
Oh, that's because it's my director's
Okay.
account, so we can record it. There you go.
Fair enough.
Oh, okay.
And there you are. Nice to see you.
I am here.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarath.
Hey, how you doing?
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
Good.
We'll give it a couple of minutes. It's not even 12 o'clock yet. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
good stuff. How's everyone getting on?
Yeah, good.
Coping with isolation okay?
Yeah, I'm actually on a day off today.
Oh, lovely.
Oh, nice.
Weird as it sounds. Hoping to go out for a walk in the nice weather when there's not so many people around.
Yeah, sounds like a plan.
Mm.
Yeah, I think it's important to get out. Just even if it's just for half an hour. Otherwise, you go stir crazy indoors.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
I just at least sit in my backyard to get some fresh air. Otherwise I'll go nuts, I guess.
Yep. I feel
Yeah.
sorry for the people who don't have gardens, because if we didn't have a garden, my kids would be mad. Would be going insane.
Mm.
Thankfully, they spend most of their time in the garden, which is good. I'm lucky it's not pouring with rain as well, right?
Are they old enough that you have to homeschool them, Gareth? Or
Yeah, so they're 6 and 8. So my wife's doing that side of things. She's doing a really good job. But yeah, I think today will be the last day of schooling, and then they've got 2 weeks off for Easter, and then they're back.
cool.
Back at the 20th of April, I think.
Yeah. But I suppose then you can't go on day trips for the school holidays.
Nope. So it might be quite nice. It would have been quite nice maybe to have some work to do, just to keep things focused and give them some structure to the day. But hey ho. Hello, Laura.
Hello.
Nice to meet you, or meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm doing very good. Video, we started at 12 on a dot, yeah?
Yeah, I say so. I say we just get the roll in.
Cool.
We can go from there. So, yeah, just want to do a quick intro, but thanks very much for everyone who's attending today. The idea is, even though we're in isolation, it doesn't mean you can't meet new people and learn new stuff. So, I want to give a shout out to Gareth, who's going to be facilitating the session today. Just keep chatting away, enjoy it, and I'll put myself on mute and tell my bit and let you all get to it.
Awesome.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Billy. Thank you for sorting this out. So this was Oleg and Billy's idea to do some lean coffee sessions. Hopefully everyone's aware of what lean coffee is. If you're not, please, I'll give you a quick overview around what it is. So it's a case of writing down the topics in this retro tool. I'll be the first to admit that I've never used this tool at all. So it might be quite interesting, but I've had a little bit of introduction. Can everyone see my screen, by the way?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So to add cards, to add a topic that you want to talk about, you just simply double click and then you can start typing your idea. You can delete a card by clicking the backspace. You can then also obviously move things around. Sorry, I just moved someone's card there. You can then, we'll give it a couple of minutes to kind of get the ideas down, and then we'll spend 30 seconds probably voting on the ones that we want to discuss. You'll get 3 votes each, and the ones that get the most votes will then move over into the to discuss column. And then we'll spend 5 minutes kind of discussing the top one. And at the end of that 5 minutes, we'll kind of decide whether to carry on talking about it or to stop talking and move on to the next topic to discuss. If anyone can't add cards themselves, then please just message me on here. I think you can just type in there somewhere. Just message the idea and I'll write it down, or Billy can write it down. And then we can kind of just make sure that everyone gets their voice heard. Please be respectful of people who are talking. Feel free to just observe and be a silent observer if that's what you wish to do. Hopefully you can get just as much out of it by doing that as you can by participating and then being vocal. We'll start now, so maybe just spend the timer here. Does everyone know how to vote as well, actually? I should show that. So there's a little voting tool here. You can basically click on whatever one you want to vote on. So it's that one there. Another cool thing, which is this one here, the confetti tool, which means you can spray confetti in. But that's probably not very useful for this. But feel free to do it and have a bit of fun. So yes, I'll set a timer now for just do 1 minute. I think maybe that'd be enough. And if not, we can always add more time on at the end. So start writing down some ideas. Be sure to make your sticky notes public by clicking the button at the bottom there. So yeah, go right ahead. If anyone's got any questions whilst people are writing, then just ask them, and we'll try and answer them. Cool, so that's a minute gone. Do people still want a bit more time to either write some up or do some more voting? We'll give it another minute and then we'll start moving things over.
Gareth, if you press the refresh button, yeah, there.
Yeah, gotcha. Cheers, mate.
Gareth, so when that says vote 6 at the top, does that mean I've voted 6 times? Or is that 6?
That's 6 votes in the introduction group, I believe.
Right, okay.
So, yeah, so don't worry about that. That was just me messing about.
Right.
Cool, so that's 2 minutes. Is everyone happy to start looking at the top ones and moving them across? Shout if you're not happy. Excellent, cool. So we can see the top one is have the courage to ask questions. So I'll drag that across to discuss. We've got how to get started in test automation with 3. What tools, resources are available to make me a better tester? There is also critical thinking in testing and passion for knowing how things work and how to break them. Cool. I think that's all of the ones with 3. Yes, so the next step now, so we're going to take the top theme or topic, have courage to ask questions. We'll move that across to discussing. We'll set a 5-minute timer this time. And then we'll basically just discuss what that means and what it means to us and why it's important. I can't see who's PS, sorry. So Parveen, you raised this one. So if we reset the timer.
Yeah, it's me.
and we will start talking about it. So, Paveen, what did you mean when you say have courage to ask questions?
Yeah, I think sometimes, I don't know if it is with everyone, but sometimes we as a tester, we are good at asking questions, but sometimes we tend to feel like, okay, I don't know if it's a weird question. Should we ask? Should we not? So I think we should not stop ourselves. We need to have courage to ask. Like, and it's not something like, yeah, my point was like, not just try to ask questions from the feature level, but on the architecture level, on the process level, like, you need to have that. That's exactly the main creativity which we have as a tester. So I think that's my main point of having courage to ask questions, not just on like implementation, testing, story, or anything, but also from risk point of view, from architecture point of view, and anything process point of view. So yeah.
Cool. Anyone got anything to add to that?
For me, it's partly finding out the right person to ask questions to. Like in group discussions, it's not easy, but it's important to throw out questions. But if you're working on something, and especially if you're new to a company, how do you work out the right person to approach? And if you approach someone and then they don't give you the answer that you're after, how do you find the next person to ask?
Yeah. Is there any tips that you've found in your experience that kind of help with that, or?
I've definitely found that, and in this climate, it's really hard, but establishing relationships with people in the office and getting to know them on a personal level makes them often more approachable. I know lots of testers who keep jars of sweets on their desk to encourage people to come over and talk to them because they get rewarded.
I'd probably eat them all myself, but there you go.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, you need to have that, build the relationship, because not everyone is very open or happy when you keep asking questions. So I think it really is very important to build that relation, to start building that relation, to ask any kind of question with anyone. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I also
yeah,
think, sorry, I was just going to say that I also think it's important that even if you don't understand, like, because sometimes when you're talking about like a microservices on nodes in Azure or something like that, and for an architect, when you're speaking to them, like I just play dumb. I'm like, oh, tell me everything, because in that don't, I think what I'm really trying to say is don't be afraid to not know the information, because 9 times out of 10 they will love explaining the stuff, and they will want to explain it to the nth degree, which inevitably helps us in the long run, because it makes us think about, oh, okay, yeah, what about this?
So I think on that point, I think the timing of asking that question is important, because there's such a small window when you can probably ask certain questions. If you're like 2 months down the line in a project and you're asking something that really you should have asked right at the start, it becomes very difficult, really, doesn't it, to kind of ask what is Azure? Right? You've been using it for 2 months and you're asking these questions. I think there is definitely a timing element to that as well. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, I would have thought that, really, like anything. I think before you even start looking at a story, before you start working on a project, if you know you've got something coming down the line, that's when you really need to understand what it is. And before you test anything, you need to understand technically how that's all put together before you functionally test it, because otherwise, I don't know, you're trying to put policy on the system and it's not going on, and you're not going to know why if you don't understand what's happening under the hood.
Anybody else got anything else to add? One thing for me, I guess, is it only down to us as testers to ask these questions, or is it something that we can help others do? And that's a question to everyone here, really. Just what can we do to kind of bring others into the conversation and bring others into the questions as well?
I think Three Amigos is a good way to get people together, bringing people from different parts of the software development cycle, at minimum, developers, PMs, and QAs. And oftentimes, if the QA kind of instigates and starts asking some questions, then oftentimes that opens the doors for others to feel comfortable asking questions. I mean, I've seen that personally where I work. If I start asking some questions, a developer will chime in and be like, oh, yeah, on a related note, I have a similar question to what Sufyan just asked. So oftentimes getting everybody in a room together helps to open up those doors, and people don't feel shy about going up to someone individually, but rather now in a group session, they feel a little bit safer.
Yeah, I think that's an important part as well, right? Because I think it goes back to having the courage, I think, to ask these questions, because chances are if you've got this question, someone else in the room possibly has a similar question or the same question. And having someone explain it can also mean that if they have to explain it, then they learn it, they understand it more. It's a great way to kind of learn something is by explaining something to someone and teaching someone something. And by having them answer these questions, it almost reinforces their understanding of the topic by explaining it to you. So I think it's not just beneficial for you as a tester to ask these questions, and it's not just beneficial to the other people in the room who hear the answer, but it's also beneficial to the person who answers the question as well. We're at 5 minutes. Do we want to talk about this for another 2 minutes, or do you want to move on to something else?
I would like to add a point to this. Yeah, can you guys hear me?
I'll add 2 minutes onto it and we can carry on.
We are still discussing this question, right? Have courage to ask questions, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So, okay, yeah. In my experience, like, once when we get the requirements or say user stories or use cases, the moment we get involved with the business analysts and understand the project requirements, we naturally gain so much knowledge about the product. Once you gain the knowledge of the product, the questions naturally come up to you. And then on a functional level, you become as equally good as a developer. Yeah. Once you are naturally good at picking up functionalities, you will get the courage to ask any question, in my opinion. It's also most of the products are built from a market perspective. My last work was with a financial firm. Most of the functionality is built according to the government rules and regulations. Even the developers are referring to that. So all the information that business analyst, developer, or tester has is the same. So once you are functionally knowledgeable, the courage comes naturally, in my opinion.
Yep. Yeah. Anyone got anything to add to that?
I was just going to add that normally it's kind of like a discussion that leads to questions. So when I'm sort of like testing, normally what I do is I'd go and have a discussion with the developer, for example, and talk about something which might generate questions, which then would mean, right, okay, I need to go and confirm that with a BA. Or if you're talking to a BA and you're talking about something that's not quite, you're not technically understanding, I need to go back and ask that to the developer. So those sorts of discussions generate questions anyway, which then sort of like, well, we need to have a meeting and get those following people involved to find out further answers to this. So it's kind of like a discussion that leads to questions and gets other people involved, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a case of making those discussions open and available to people as and when they need them. I think like Three Amigos is a great example of that. But then there's also having something that's not as formal as that. Perhaps just having a coffee and things like that leads to building relationships and leads to having discussions that ultimately just benefit the team as a whole.
One more point I would like to add, like along with Three Amigo, in some organization, they do have a technical session before the sprint planning. Yeah. So that's also a good place where you can join and understand how they are building it technically. Otherwise, if you don't understand the technical thing, it will be difficult to test also. So I think testers should involve in the technical sessions also, so that understand what's the architecture, how they are building it, what they are doing for it. So
cool. Yeah, no, that's great. We're at the time again. We've already spent 7 minutes now on this. Do we want to move on to the next topic? Shout if you don't want to move on. That might be easier. Cool. So the next topics are how to get started in test automation. But I also think it's kind of like what tools and resources are available to make you a better tester. So I think I'll group them together because I think they are related in some way. So we'll move them across. So who was it who said this one? Kazim, is that pronounced right?
So it's Qasim, but yeah.
Qasim, cool. Sorry, yeah. So how to get started in test automation, and also kind of leading on to what tools / resources are available to make me a better tester. So why don't you start, and then we can kind of add in as we go in. Go on.
Yeah, sure thing. So so basically, I'm a new QA. I've been working as a QA for about 1.5 years now, and So already I can I can start feeling myself wanting to move more and more towards test automation. Basically we hired a like somebody to create a test automation framework, and while he was working on that, I got really interested in it. So I used to ask him a lot of questions, talk to him quite a bit, and yeah, as of right now, my job is like probably 90% manual, and I feel like I guess to move forward in my career and to sort of improve, I'd I, okay. I don't want to say I'd have to learn test automation because I don't think that's true, but I think it would be very beneficial to learn test automation.
Cool. Anyone got anything to add to that? I've got a few thoughts myself, but I'll open up to the floor.
Yeah,
A lot
I think
It's a,
Oh, sorry.
sure, you go ahead.
Okay, I was going to quickly just add, a lot of the jobs that you seem to see these days seem to want to have automation, even though necessarily that you might not actually do any automation. They seem to see it as a requirement these days. So I definitely think it's something that most testers or all testers should kind of at least get basic knowledge into, because it seems to be a requirement.
Yeah, automation is really a must for the tester in nowadays. So you should have a automation testing along with manual, because you can't forget manual testing. And to answer this question, like how to get started in test automation, from my experience, I would say it's basically depend upon few things. One is the skill set that is available. Another is, in most of the organization, I found that the technology that dev is working on, they want the automation to be done in that technology. And if you have a freedom, then you can if devs are said, okay, go ahead and set up your own based on the skill set of the tester that you have, then you can decide upon, you can write an automation in Ruby or in Java or in JavaScript. So for a beginner, I would say Ruby is the best because it's very simple, and it has got lots of flexibility in writing tests if you compare with Java and JavaScript. So
And then
Yeah,
go on.
yeah, I can add some more points to help Kasim. Kasim, there's a lot of misinformation outside saying that, learn Selenium in 4 days, 5 days, or in a week. That's so much wrong, actually. If someone who wants to start in automation, I suggest you learn some basic programming of Java, core Java, and OOPS concept. Selenium is 90% programming. The tool is only 10%. This is what people are trying to sell outside, giving misinformation, and companies are spending like 2,000, 3,000 pounds on a resource, getting them trained, and when they come back they're not able to implement. You learn coding skills over a period of time, say 6 months or 1 year. It's totally dependent on person. You pick up a language of your choice, be it Java, C#, like Amit said, whatever the developer language is used in a specific firm, that's the language that is expected to use in your automation as well. In my last work, it was C#, but I was from a Java background. So start with Java. That's where the most of the Selenium developers are, and lots of discussions online are in Java. Or even like Amit said, maybe you can start with Ruby as well. But I suggest you learn programming. Don't forget about automation. Like automation is programming. There's nothing like do Selenium automation is about program your manual scenarios. That's what it means. So like I said, learn basic programming, then try to understand the automation architecture, that is like the POM, page object model, XPath, CSS selectors. Then you give yourself time, don't rush the process. This takes time, it takes anywhere up to 6 months to 2 years. Yeah, I hope I've answered your question.
Anyone else got anything to add? Because I think for me, I think you mentioned so basic programming and then moving on to Selenium. But then if you learn the programming, then you can apply it not just to Selenium, but you can apply it to a whole host of other tooling. You're not kind of tied just to one automation tool.
Yeah.
But I think that's the problem that we get, is that people just think of Selenium as the magic bullet and we're going to automate everything through Selenium. But in reality, that Selenium is such a small part. Just being aware of other tools and being aware of how to use them kind of help feed into the automation journey that you're about to go on. There's a great online resource, I don't know if anyone's used it, called Test Automation University, and that kind of has a whole host of automation tutorials that will probably be useful for you to look at. But for me, automation is literally just a tool in our tool belt that we can then use as and when we need it. The real thing comes down to, and we'll talk about it in a minute, probably around like critical thinking and being able to apply it and being able to understand what to test, where to test it, and when to test it. 5 minutes is up. Do we want to keep talking, or do we want to move on to something else? Shout if you want to keep talking.
I want to throw in just a quick note on the manual. It's going to take 3 seconds. Throw away the notion of automated testing versus manual testing. Throw away the notion of manual versus, throw away the manual motion in itself. You'll see in critical thinking in testing probably will be discussed, but testing is testing. Automation is just a tool to help you with testing.
Yeah.
Simple as.
Yeah, 100% agree. Cool. We will move on to critical thinking testing. Let me just grab these and move them over. Who raised critical thinking?
That was me.
Sufyan?
Yeah, Sufyan.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sufyan, good.
So really, I was just thinking about the topic that was set for this session about what makes a good tester, and we hear about critical thinking a lot. So I was just really wanting to get people's ideas on what that means to them. What does critical thinking and testing mean? To me, it means looking at things analytically, really digging into what it is that you're actually testing and understanding the product. All of that kind of comes into critical thinking, but we see the word critical thinking everywhere. It's plastered in every job description pretty much. So I just wanted to get everyone's thoughts on what it means to them when we say critical thinking and testing.
Anyone got anything to add to that?
I think, yeah, I just want to add, like, it comes back to the automation again. So for me, like, I think automation is just a tool. Yeah, it is more on coding and all that stuff. We all get so overwhelmed, like we have to learn all that stuff. But I think the most important step, or the first step, starts with critical thinking about testing, what tests to be automated or what not to be automated. Like, instead of thinking like just automate everything, because like in today's world, like with DevOps and everything, we can't just automate everything and add it to the pipeline. So we have to be very like, you know, we need to have that sort of critical thinking in deciding and defining, like from getting the inputs from the whole team, not just us as a testers trying to decide what to automate or not. So I think this as well is a very important aspect into automation.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit more to it though, isn't there? Because I would have thought, well, certainly like any kind of story, any project that you're working on, like for me, I will admit I've never seen and I've never asked for someone in critical thinking and testing. So I was trying to get my head around what it is that the statement means. But I would have thought really the fundamentals of when you're approaching any sort of testing project is, you know, it really is, well, what is it I'm testing? What are my scenarios? And you don't saturation test everything because you don't have time to do it. So, you know, what is your boundary? You know, the boundary analysis test, all those basic QA concepts don't go out the window. What really is, we forget that we still need to do them, and then it's the deciding of, well, what is that? Is that a manual test? Is that an automation test? And in actual fact, where the DevOps is now going is actually with this shift left, and I'm sure everyone's heard shift left, it's actually going, well, actually, can that be a unit test? Can the developer actually short circuit that bit of component and actually do that test for me instead of me having to do it, and then just showing me the results of that test, and then I know that coverage has been achieved. So I think there's critical thinking and testing and understanding what the product is and how you test that product, the bits under the hood. And then there's also the approach of what can be tested where and how. Because although we've kind of touched on automation and manual, there's also performance in there as well. And then there's the technical testing and the handshake testing, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there. But yeah, that's what I think that one is.
Anyone else got anything to add to that?
Yeah, if I must add to this, every tester should have some degree of exploration, experimenting, and discovering what the functionality is about. And if you can think to an extent where you can challenge your developers or say business analysts about the functionalities rather than just like testing the use cases that are given, you should develop to an extent where you also suggest the business analyst, wherein sometimes the business analyst can go back to stakeholders and say that, hey, we found some important scenario here, would you like us to implement this, our QA team has found out, you got to think to that level, and think like a end user, that's what makes you think better, in my opinion, to build wonderful bug-free products.
Yeah, that all makes sense. I think for me, I think critical thinking comes about just thinking outside the box and not necessarily accepting what people are saying. It's almost like having to prove it in a different way. It comes to a whole host of things about asking the right questions, asking the right people the right questions. And I think it's all everything we spoke about so far kind of ties into this critical thinking, in that why are we doing these things? What value is it bringing? And what is the worst that could happen in these scenarios? And how can we go about proving that out in a safe and in a time efficient way whilst providing value to the business? Because for me, testing is all about how can we provide that value. Cool. 5 minutes is up. Does anyone want to keep talking? We've got we've got 2 minutes, so probably best to call it a day here. Thank you so much for everyone's input. Everything's been really valuable, and I hope everyone's taken different things away from this. I know I certainly have, and I think even if you haven't spoken, then I think it's nice just to hear people talk about testing and just getting to know people on a more personal level, especially in these strange times, shall we say.
Yeah.
Cool. Billy, I'll hand over to you, mate. You can wrap things up nicely.
Perfect. Cheers for that, Gareth, and thanks everyone for coming along. Just want to add on, so of course this was Oleg's idea, so shout out to him for helping us set this up. Of course, we've got our LinkedIn group, so if anyone's got any further questions, please ask that on there. I've also recorded the video, and I'll be sharing it on my Google Drive, and I'll be sending over the link so everyone can sort of review the session. But I just want to say these sort of things are simple to set up. You've all used Metro Retro now, so hopefully you enjoyed it, and looking forward to hopefully some of you guys setting up your own Lean Coffee sessions in the future. But yeah, thanks very much for.
Hey, Billy, quick question. Will we, since you recorded this, and I'm guessing you recorded the other ones, will we have access to those as well?
Yeah, I can share those as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, everyone stay safe, and we'll catch up soon.
Yeah.
Still have a great day, people.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.